Hi, and welcome to Focus St. Charles County. I'm Scott Drochnik. Okay, quick show of hands. How many folks out there are familiar with the Katy Trail? Well, I see your hand and your hand. And what about you? Don't know? Okay, well, today we're going to take you on a trip down the Katy Trail, runs all the way through St. Charles County, and we're going to make 6 very exciting stops along the way. The Katy Trail actually starts just a little west of St. Charles in Machens and goes 240 miles across Missouri to Clinton. It's been going on for a long time, and it's on what used to be the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Rail Line, or the MKT, and a lot of neat things have developed along the way, including bed and breakfasts, wineries, and a lot of tourism. Here to tell us all about it and how you can enjoy it even more is Dawn Fredrickson, the Katy Trail Coordinator for the Missouri State Parks.
Katy Trail State Park has a really unique history in the fact that it's built on the former Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad corridor, and the railroad was called the MKT, kind of the abbreviated Missouri-Kansas-Texas, and then it got further abbreviated to KT or Katy, which is how the Katy Trail got its name. And what's unique about the MKT Railroad is that most railroads started in the east and went west. The MKT actually started in the west and went east. It started in Kansas and then moved into Missouri and then moved down through Oklahoma into Texas. And what a lot of people ask is, well, why isn't Oklahoma included in the name? But when the railroad was built, started in the 1860s after the Civil War, Oklahoma wasn't a state at that time. It was just a territory, so it wasn't included in the name. So that's why it's MKT and or Katy as it's known now. And then in the 1980s, MKT Railroad stopped its rail line. And so we had this railroad corridor that wasn't being used. And Missouri State Park saw it as a wonderful opportunity to create a long-distance trail that stretches all the way from just east of St. Charles to Clinton in the west, which is about 60 miles southeast of Kansas City. So you have a trail that's 240 miles long that almost completely goes from St. Louis to Kansas City. I mentioned that the Katy Trail has a unique history in the fact that it's built on the railroad corridor, but it also has a really unique history in its current version as a state park. We started construction on the Katy Trail in the late 1980s. We wouldn't have been able to start the construction were it not for a couple of really key individuals. Ted and Pat Jones were big promoters and advocates for the trail, and Ted was the son of the founder of the Edward Jones Investment Company. And he and his wife contributed $2.2 million for us to acquire the corridor and then to start building the trail. And I can honestly say that were it not for their initial support, we probably it would have taken a lot longer for us to achieve what we see today. The first 5 miles of the trail were open in 1990 between Rocheport and Huntsdale, which is in the midsection of the Katy Trail. So in 2010, we celebrated the trail's 20th anniversary. The section that we're on right now, the Machens section, it wasn't opened until 2011, and what's kind of unique about that is that portion of the trail that was just east of St. Charles was kind of destroyed during the 93 and 95 floods, and there was big blue holes that we couldn't really cross to connect the St. Charles piece to the Machens piece. And we negotiated an agreement with the North County Levee District, and we actually built part of the trail on top of the L15 levee. So now we have the full, complete trail to Machens. Today where we're standing at is Machens Trailhead, which is the easternmost terminus of the Katy Trail. And Machens used to be known as Texas Junction when the rail line was in operation. And the reason why it's called Texas Junction was because of the connection to Texas through the railroad. What a lot of people notice when they get here is that the milepost behind us says milepost 27. And people are thinking, okay, well, if this is the start of the Katy Trail, why doesn't it start at 0? Why does it start at 27? And the reason why is because when the MKT Railroad was in existence, they purchased the rights to run the Katy Railroad trains to St. Louis to Union Station via the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad, so Union Station would be milepost 0, which is about 27 miles away from here. So that's why the trail starts at milepost 27. And we decided to retain the historic railroad markers just to kind of remind people that this used to be a railroad. So if you see the milepost marker, milepost 27, that's why. Well, Machens is a good place to stop and explore just because it is the end of the Katy Trail. And if you want to get the whole Katy Trail experience, you want to come out to Machens. One thing you need to remember, though, is that the only way to get here is either by foot or by bike. There's no vehicle access to the trailhead, and you'll have to park at Black Walnut, which is about 3 miles west of the trailhead here. Another reason why it's good to come to Machens is, again, to explore that railroad history, because there is an active rail line just north of us, and you'll see trains and you'll hear trains, and that kind of reminds you of, oh, you know what, MKT used to be a railroad too, and it just kind of that continuity of history. There's another park that's a little bit further east of us. It's a really neat park. It's at the junction or the confluence of the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, and it's called Jones Confluence Point State Park, and it's in West Alton, Missouri. And it's really, really a neat park because you get to see where the two mighty rivers meet, and a lot of times you'll see eagles and other waterfowl along the river, so it's a beautiful park. Another park in the area is a St. Charles County park called Hideaway Harbor, and again, it's a wonderful place to look for wild eagles and other wildlife. By and large, I would say that the trail on the eastern end in St. Charles County is fairly flat. There are a few places where you may experience up and down, but it's not very challenging on this end. And the surface is what we call crushed limestone, which is really, really fine gravel, which in the summer especially gets really hard packed. And so it's easy to ride on, especially with mountain bikes and hybrid bikes. On this end at Machens, you'll be riding through farmland. So, and again, that's kind of a reminder of our rural heritage and our agricultural history and how it was connected to the railroad. And then just before you get to St. Charles, you'll enter into a river bottom forest, and it's pretty forested, and then you get to catch glimpses of the Missouri River, and in some places you'll be riding right next to the river. So it's kind of a unique experience because you're going from landscape type to landscape type, the agricultural fields to bottomland forest. So if you're going to be bicycling on the Katy Trail, there's 3 important things that you need to remember to bring. The first and foremost is that you need to bring water with you because not all of our trailheads have running water. The second most important thing that you need to bring with you is something maybe to help you change a flat tire, whether it's a tube or, because people do experience flats on the Katy Trail. And the third most important thing to bring with you is a sense of adventure, because the Katy is kind of a window into history. And railroad buffs love to ride on the trail because you do catch that glimpse of railroad history. Nature lovers also love to ride on the trail because you can see wildlife, deer and turkey, and in some places, in some of the river bottoms, you can see beaver and eagles. And then it's a way to experience some of the historic communities along the trail and experience the flavor of those communities. So definitely bring your sense of adventure.
Dawn, thank you so much for that great information. And now we're going to make our second stop here in historic St. Charles. That's where the beginning of the Lewis and Clark portion of the trail begins. And surely you know about historic St. Charles. What? You don't? How can you say you live in St. Charles County? You got to come down and experience it because there's so much to see and do and buy and eat and enjoy. Restaurants, shops, festivals, and a whole lot more. Here to tell us all about what you'd enjoy as you ride through St. Charles is Jody Devonshire, the owner of the Bike Stop Cafe.
The Katy Trail is located at Frontier Park in historic St. Charles. It's actually the beginning of the Lewis and Clark Trail also, which ends in Oregon. It's a great stop because the St. Charles was actually the first state capital of Missouri. So there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of interesting artifacts and culture. St. Charles is the best stop on the Katy Trail, mostly because we do offer so much. It's located right on Frontier Park along the river, finishes with some bluffs. It goes all the way to Machens. A lot of people don't realize that. It has another 23 miles. There's a wonderful amount of history and culture. We have an art museum. We have lots of shopping, tons of restaurants from every type of restaurant you can imagine, and lots of interesting things for family and fun things for kids to do. Well, the Bike Stop Cafe is located right across the street from the Lewis and Clark statue, which is the beginning of the Lewis and Clark Trail. We also have the boathouse, which houses a replica of the Lewis and Clark boat, and the depot is, of course, located on Frontier Park. One of the great things about St. Charles is it's a cycling hub. So I call it the nexus of cycling because we have mountain biking, trail riding, and road cycling. So you can go to Bankert Island and work on the mountain biking trails there. You can ride along the Katy Trail, all 237 miles. There's also a really awesome eco park that runs along the perimeter of the Missouri River, and they have lots of different stops on Eco Park that has some history, talks about the sunken ship that's by the bridge and different cool things. And then you'll get back on the Katy Trail. You can go out to the dog park, Juiceable Park, and take your dog for a run, and then come back and enjoy all the fairs on Main Street. Well, Bankert Island is pretty cool because in the spring it actually does flood, so that's why it's called an island. There's a bit of a moat and you cross a bridge, so it's a really neat animal habitat. There's lots of different trees and sands and things, and you can overlook the river, so that's a really cool place to go. It's one of our favorites. Main Street is home to lots of great restaurants and different places to purchase knickknacks and fun things for the family. But make sure you stop by the Bike Stop Cafe because we have bike rentals for the Katy Trail, and you can also get your bike serviced or enjoy a great healthy lunch.
Jody, thank you so much, and love the shop. Folks, don't go away. We're going to keep on trucking, and as we go down the Katy Trail, our next couple of stops are going to be Weldon Spring and Defiance. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Over 13 million people are affected by famine, war, and drought in the Horn of Africa.
Make a simple text donation of $10.
But do more than donate. Forward the facts.
Welcome back to Focus St. Charles County. I'm Scott Drochnik, and we're continuing today to take a journey down the Katy Trail. So far, we've started out in Machens, we've been to St. Charles, now we're moving on down to Weldon Spring. And the trail cuts through a beautifully wooded area, lots of deer, lots of wildlife and turkey, and a place that you will enjoy the natural beauty. Also, a very interesting connection to World War II and the Cold War. Not to mention a couple of villages that have some remains, but they're not there anymore. Here to tell us all about it is once again Dawn from Missouri State Parks.
Well, we are at the Katy Trail trailhead, Weldon Spring, at milepost 56, and it's part of, or it goes through, Weldon Spring Conservation Area, which is managed by the Department of Conservation. And actually the trail travels through the conservation area for about 5 miles, so it's really, really heavily forested, which is really fortunate for cyclists in the summertime because there's lots of shade. And you'll see wildlife, quite a lot of wildlife actually, deer especially, down in the river bottoms and the woods here. What's kind of interesting about this area is that really close to where I-64 crosses the Katy Trail, you'll see an old quarry with some concrete silos, or what look like concrete silos. Those are crusher bins, and that's kind of, again, a reminder of the trail's railroad history because the quarry operated to supply gravel for the railroad. But what really is fascinating about Weldon Spring is its connection to World War II and to the Cold War. What a lot of people don't realize is that this entire area, about 17,000 acres, was bought by the U.S. government to create the largest ordnance factory, Weldon Spring Ordnance Factory, to create explosives during World War II, TNT and other explosives. And what's really interesting about that is that there were actually communities, little villages down here, including Hamburg Village, and the government bought up those villages. The residents were relocated, and the villages were dismantled so that they could have the entire 17,000 acres to build the explosives. And you can get a little bit more of that history if you go to the Weldon Spring Interpretive Center, which you can reach from the trail if you take the 8-mile Hamburg Trail spur, which it connects about half a mile from the Weldon Spring Trailhead. If you're going west, you'll catch the Hamburg Trail, and it's about 8 miles up to the Interpretive Center. But it's well worth a visit because this history is pretty unique to this area. One of the things that I love most about the Katy Trail is all of the connections to other parks or to other to other public land. And this is a really good example of that. About a half a mile west of the Weldon Spring Trailhead is where you can pick up the Hamburg Trail, which, as I mentioned before, is 8 miles, and it goes through the Weldon Spring Conservation Area, connects to the Weldon Spring Interpretive Center, and then you continue on, and it goes all the way to August Busch Conservation Area. So you can kind of hopscotch from public land to public land, which is, I think, pretty cool. There are actually two Lewis and Clark historical markers. There's one that's about 1.5 miles west, and there's also one that's about 1.5 miles east. And what's really neat about the trail is that not only do you get that railroad history and sort of the rural agricultural history, but it also reminds you of the early pioneer days when, you know, this place wasn't really settled by European settlers, and Lewis and Clark were coming through for the first time and exploring and documenting what they discovered in their journals. So really the Katy Trail is very rich in the state's history.
Dawn, thank you so much for that wonderful information. And folks, is it not crazy to think there used to be 3 towns where Weldon Spring is? Well, our next stop on our journey down the Katy Trail brings us to Defiance. It's not a trailhead, but there is a very large commuter lot, and you'll also find 4 wineries, 2 taverns, and a lot of neat things to do, including a bed and breakfast and other shops. Here to tell us all about it is Robin White. She's co-owner of the Katy Bike Rental and Robin's Nest.
So a lot of people are curious how the town of Defiance got its name. It all started back in the 1890s. The railroad came through and decided to give the town of Machens a train stop. And the local people, who referred to this area at the time kind of unofficially as Parsons, they decided they wanted a train stop as well. Well, the folks in Machens didn't like that at all. They did not want the competition for the train stop. And the railroad wasn't really crazy about having 2 stops that close to each other. It would have been within 2 miles. But they told the people in Parsons they couldn't give them the train stop at this time because they weren't even officially a town at that point, registered with the state of Missouri, and they didn't have a farm to market road. So the people in town got busy, including Lee Parson, who started selling off parcels of land so that the local people could establish a business district and become an official town. And the rest of the residents got busy building a farm to market road, which is now known as Defiance Road. So they went back to the railroad and said, okay, we're ready for our train stop. And the railroad said, you know, you can't, we really don't want another train stop. And besides, you guys refer to yourself as Parsons, and we already have a train stop by the name of Parsons. And that would be very confusing. So the locals were not happy about that at all. And they said, you know what? Who needs the railroad? We're going to take our farm to market road and we're going to build that all the way down to the river, and we'll just do our trade there with the barges who are on their way into town in St. Louis. Well, of course, the railroad didn't want that because there was a lot of competition between the railroad and, you know, the river at the time. So the railroad finally said, okay, you can have your train stop, but you cannot call it Parsons. So they all got together and decided that because it was in their defiance that they were granted the train stop, that they would like to be known as the town of Defiance. So even though the town of Defiance doesn't have an official trailhead, we do have a wonderful commuter lot that's located right next to the Katy Bike Rental. Ample parking located directly off the trail. Plenty of room to load and unload your bikes and get direct access on and off the trail. And then there are also 2 bridges into town, one up the road and one right here in our backyard at Katy Bike Rental. And you can easily come through and access the wineries and restaurants through there. Right here at Katy Bike Rental, everyone's always welcome to come in. You know, we rent bikes. We also have concessions, and we're more than happy anybody who needs to get their tires checked for air or use the restrooms. Everybody's always welcome here. Defiance is home to 4 wineries. 2 of them are accessible directly off of the trail, Yellow Farmhouse Winery and Sugar Creek, both amazing wineries making award-winning wines. We also have 2 taverns. A lot of people refer to them as the biker bars. Both have really good food. The folks across the street at the Defiance Roadhouse have been in the restaurant business for years. They're the owners of Salvador's off of Highway 94, and we're very excited to have them in town. They offer all kinds of great food, pizzas, pastas, and salads. Very family-friendly, wonderful place to go. And of course, right up the road, Wine Country Gardens, not directly off of the trail, but you can definitely get there by car or just to hop across Darst Bottom in 94. Wonderful, wonderful place. Started out as a nursery. They added a cafe, and they have grown now to where they can comfortably seat over 300 people for weddings. Amazing food, really good wine. And then, of course, up the road at off of Defiance Road, we have Chandler Hill. Beautiful estate. You know, on the weekends they too have live music. They have both California and Missouri wines and wonderful food. So there are lots of great places to eat and drink in town. And then we also have the historic Daniel Boone home, which is a wonderful place to visit. Great family place to go. Lots of history there. The village now has over 12 historic homes, and when you walk through it, you really get that feeling of what life was like in the 1800s. We have a lot of great places to stay in the town of Defiance. We'll start with the oldest first, the historic Parsons home that sits up on the hill. It was built in the early 1800s, completely restored in the 1980s. Wonderful historic place to stay. And we also have some new additions as well. We have Grapevine Vacation Rentals up the road, 2 beautiful properties directly off of the Katy Trail. And then a little bit further up Defiance Road, we have Great View Bed and Breakfast. Both of those last properties that I talked about allow you access to your own private kitchen, a swimming pool, a hot tub, just wonderful places to stay and enjoy the entire area. Defiance used to be one of those places that you drive through and maybe stop here or there, for a few hours, and we've really grown to a place where you can actually spend an entire weekend now between the trail and the Daniel Boone home, the great places to eat in the wineries. It's a great place to spend a whole weekend. Well, next time you're in Defiance, we'd love to have you stop by Katy Bike Rental. If you need any bikes, we rent trailers for children, tag-alongs, and we also provide shuttle service from one end of the trail to the other. So please feel free to call us at 636-987-2673. And if you want any more information about any of the wonderful businesses in the town of Defiance, including the wineries and the eateries and the wonderful B&Bs, you can get more information at defiancemode.org.
Robin, thank you so much and best of luck. Well, folks, we've got 2 more stops to make on the Katy Trail, so don't go away because we're going to continue our journey in just a moment.
The forest is a magical place for your whole family with animals and fun all around. Ooh. So discover the forest and explore all the wonder that's there. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
Hey folks, welcome back to Focus St. Charles County. I'm Scott Drachnik, and we are continuing our journey down the Katy Trail. We've stopped at some really cool places along the way. Last up was Defiance. Now we go a little bit further down and we come to the town of Matson. Matson and Defiance had a bit of a rivalry because of the railroad years ago, and now you're going to find a great place to stop and go up on Matson Hill Park and get a wonderful view of the vistas that are out there. It's also known as Boone Country. Here to tell us why this is Boone Country and the other neat things about Matson, once again from Missouri State Parks, is Dawn Fredrickson.
Matson is really, really unique because when you reach Matson, you're very much into Daniel Boone country. Before this area was even a state, this was still part of the Louisiana Territory, and he was actually given a land grant. And then he and his sons platted a town that they call Missouriton in this general area. At the trailhead, there are a lot of reminders of that Daniel Boone connection, the Daniel Boone history. Right across the street from us is a little roadside park called the Daniel Boone Original Judgment Tree Park. He was kind of a combination justice of the peace and a militia leader, and he would practice frontier law under a big judgment tree, and that's what that park over there commemorates. And then just behind us at the trailhead is a memorial marker that was put in by the Daughters of the American Revolution, the St. Charles chapter, to commemorate that this is actually the eastern trailhead for the Boone's Lick Trace, or the Boone Trace, which Daniel Boone's sons would have used. They would have traveled this route to go to the Boone's Salt Lick in Howard County, so quite a distance away. So really, this is all about Daniel Boone history right here. Well, there's kind of an interesting rivalry between Defiance and Matson. Defiance is back that way, just about a mile and a half. And the reason why the town's called Defiance is because they didn't want Matson to have the only rail stop. And so Defiance became a Katy rail stop as well as Matson. And there's also still probably a rivalry between the two towns as to which town is the beginning of really the Weinstrasse or the wine road. That parallels the Katy Trail with all the wineries along the way. But definitely both communities are kind of that introduction into the communities that have the wineries. And then just west of Matson really is where the German heritage begins, the Rhineland area of Missouri, with a lot of communities that were developed by German settlers early on. And they really retain that history with the wineries and the breweries that they have. Another interesting fact about Matson is that, again, it has that connection to other public lands and other parks. For instance, if you travel up Matson Hill Road about a couple miles, you'll reach Matson Hill Park, which is kind of up at the top of the hill, and that also has a connection to the Daniel Boone family. It was part of that land grant that was associated with the Daniel Boone and his coming here and his sons being here as well. And what's nice is that if you want to have an off-trail experience, you can ride your bike up the hill and then ride your bike in Matson Hill Park, because there's a mountain bike trail there. Matson Hill Park is managed by St. Charles County Parks and Rec. The thing that's really unique about the Katy Trail, and that it runs through and connects the communities all along with the trail route, is that we like to say that the trail would just be a long-distance trail, but the communities are what provides the experience for our users, those memorable experiences. And specifically on this end of the trail, there are so many bed and breakfast facilities, there's so many wineries, there's so many breweries, there's so many little cafes and restaurants and antique shops that this area is such an attractive area for cyclists, because they know that they have these communities that they can feel welcome in and then experience that Katy Trail history, but also experience the community history and see those old homes that have been preserved and the old towns that have been preserved. And I really think that relationship between the Katy Trail and the communities is what makes this a unique experience.
Dawn, thank you so much. Great information. Folks, one more stop. We're headed now to Augusta, which is a designated wine district. Established back in 1855, Augusta's had its ups and downs with the shifting of the river and the changing of rail lines, and now its primary industry is tourism. And in the last couple of decades, they've really come back in wine production. Katy Trail comes through in the south part of town, some wineries and bed and breakfasts, very accessible, a lot of neat things in the area, as well as a lot of events throughout the year. Here to tell us more about it is Randall Oakes, who's a board member with the Augusta Chamber.
Well, where I'm standing right now is basically in the middle of where the railroad used to use, and is, of course, now the Katy Trail. But behind me, you can see an old hotel that the riverfront used to be right here, and riverboats literally used to tie up here in Augusta. And then in the 1870s, the river started shifting to the other side of the valley, which left the town high and dry. It also, by the way the laws work, left the town with all of this valley of farmland across here, which is an income producer for the town even today. Then after the town was left high and dry, it is built on 7 hills, but the railroad then came through, and so that gave new lifeblood to the town of Augusta. And the town of Augusta was established in 1855. Tourism is now the major industry for Augusta, with all of our wineries. All roads lead to Augusta, and I say that's kind of in jest, but in reality, the Katy Trail is on the south side of Augusta. So this is one avenue in, if you're traveling the 200-plus miles of the Katy Trail. And if you come in by the Katy Trail, you have access to basically 4 wineries in the area. The microbrewery is nestled right here to the side of us in the hillside. If you go on up the hill, you'll find 8 B&Bs, you'll find restaurants, you'll find shops, a little convenience store called Johann's where you can get a Coca-Cola or a Fuse. A coffee house, Kate's Coffee, will be opening in late April or early May. An art studio called Augusta Wood. Fantastic art and all kinds of unusual type furniture and other neat things. A couple of antique shops that are neat. And something we're really proud of here in Augusta is Sam Sting's Glass Studio. Sam has exhibited at the Smithsonian. He is a true nationally recognized glass artisan. And then right on down the trail is Michael Bowermaster's Wood Studio. And Michael, too, has exhibited at the Smithsonian. His wooden vessels are in galleries all over the world. The wineries, I mentioned 4 wineries are accessible by bicycle, but if you're coming in by the roads on the north side of the town, then there are 9 wineries in the general area. Augusta is kind of unusual in that right in the middle of town is a very small park, and if you're so inclined, there are swings and slides. But if you go right on a couple of blocks west of that little small central park is a huge town park where you can spread out and have a nice picnic and throw frisbees, and that park is maintained by the town. But if you're coming from St. Charles on the Katy Trail, About 3 miles east of Augusta is a spur to Klondike Park, which is a county park. And that's a magnificent park. They even have off-road type trails for the off-road cyclists. They have camping facilities there, even lakes where you can do a little bit of fishing. And it's a great place for family picnics and things like that. Klondike Park. Now that actually was a quarry for sand, where they mine sand to make Corian glass. But the bluffs and all, you go up to the top and it's just a high point and it overlooks the entire valley. One of the best things to do in Augusta is nothing. There are no traffic lights in this little town of 250 people, and just to walk, and some of the streets are on the National Register for its architecture. But if you want to get it upbeat a bit, the wineries, as I mentioned, if you're coming by car, there are 9 wineries right here in the area. Our Chamber of Commerce, we have 3 major activities during the year. In the spring, we have our Plein Air Art Festival, and that's attended by about 100, over the past 3 years, each year, about 120, 25 artists from 5 or 6 different states. That is a premier art event. And then our Fall Harvest Festival. That's the third weekend in September, and that kicks off the harvest season. And then we have activities through Thanksgiving related to the harvest. And then our annual Christmas walk. We just finished our 30th annual Christmas walk. That's the first 2 Fridays of December. And we literally have 1,000 luminaries around town. And the shops all have refreshments and entertainment and a bonfire in the town square and caroling at the church. And that's a Norman Rockwell type event. And to get more information on that and other activities going on in the area, our chamber website is augusta-chamber.org. And that way you can stay up to date with what we're doing, and just come out any time of the year. There's something and there's nothing happening, and it's just a wonderful place to unwind. It's so close to the major metro areas, and yet people who come out feel like that they've been able to escape into the countryside, and then by the end of the day get back, or 8 B&Bs right here in town. And I should mention also, historically, Augusta is the first designated wine district in the country. It is known as the Augusta Appellation, and it's because of the unique geography of this area, which makes Augusta's wine really unique to the country.
Randall, thank you so much, and we really appreciate the Augusta area. Well, folks, one last thing we want to mention, and that is a 5-day trek biking across Missouri on the Katy Trail, starting in Clinton and ending in St. Charles. It's going to be happening this year, courtesy of the Missouri State Parks, from June 17th through the 21st, and usually about 300 cyclists participate. If you'd like to be involved, go to katytrailstatepark.com to find out more information. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for this particular show. I hope you've learned a whole lot more about St. Charles County as we've gone down the Katy Trail, because I know I have. We hope to see you again soon. I'm Scott Drochnik, and please join us in the future as we focus more on St. Charles County.